Welcome to the Wisconsin Broadcasters Hall of Fame. The Wisconsin Broadcasters Association Foundation created the Hall of Fame in 1989 to recognize the achievements of those who have made broadcasting in Wisconsin what it is today. This show will highlight the careers of three outstanding Hall of Fame broadcasters: Leonard Charles, a 2017 inductee and nationally recognized broadcast engineer; broadcast journalist and editorial commentator Ed Hinshaw, inducted in 2002; and longtime Milwaukee broadcaster Bill Hurwitz, an all-pro in radio advertising sales and 2017 Hall of Fame inductee. If there's one constant in the field of broadcast technology, it's the fact that it's always changing. Leonard Charles, or Chuck, as he's called by his broadcast peers, has helped the television industry more effectively serve its audience and communities through the best use of new, evolving broadcast technologies. One of the greatest contributors to the advancement of local, state, and national broadcast engineering, Chuck has served on policy-setting national committees that will continue to shape the industry for years to come. This year, we were pleased and proud to welcome Leonard Charles into the Wisconsin Broadcasters Hall of Fame.
Today we're doing programming for the screen in the home, the screen in your pocket, the screen on your tablet, the screen on your computer. Whoops, sorry, should have silenced that.
We always called some engineers, no offense to anybody out there, wall walkers, and he wasn't like that. He was somebody that was approachable, fun, funny, just a really great guy.
He was just so steady and so embracing of the technology, and had the ability to get everybody else enthusiastic about it.
And it should start glowing blue. Take a few seconds to lock up, and as soon as it does, now we're watching digital channel 3. So that's it. I mean, people probably won't be able to do it that fast, but it's that simple.
For those of us who aren't engineers, he helps us. Can you tell us the difference between DTV and HDTV?
Oh, I can, and that's a great question. Many people are confused. They think they're the same thing. HDTV and DTV are the same thing. That's not true.
We understand engineering a lot better when you have somebody like Chuck.
That's one of the reasons that I love Chuck, is that I could go into his office and say, "What are you doing?" And he could tell me in language that I understood.
I think more than anything, the ability to wait for people to understand what it was he was trying to get them to understand.
That's the epitome of Chuck. He's just calm, and he will, you know, you go in, I've seen people go into his office and go, and Chuck just sits there very quietly and says, well, let's do this. And then the person walks out happy. So it's a gift.
There was this new FM station that went on the air in Sun Prairie, WYXE. They used to call it Wixie. And I went to bed, and I had the clock radio on next to my bed, and I couldn't sleep. And I was listening to the jock there, and I just couldn't sleep. So an hour and a half later, I got up, put my clothes on, and I drove across the highway over to where their studio was in the Wisconsin Cheeseman's building. When I walked up to the window of the studio, I scared the living daylights out of the jock behind the glass. But I watched him for about an hour. I just watched what he was doing, and I was just fascinated by what he was doing in there and what I was hearing coming out of my car radio. And so the next day, I went back to the station, talked to the program director, and got some insights of how to get into this business called broadcasting, and that's what got me into it.
It was 1987, and it was a lot different than it is today.
I came out of radio, so I didn't have a lot of TV skills, so it was a lot of learning on the job. But we had a lot of good people in the engineering department to teach me, and it took off.
Chuck did a really good job of managing up and managing down, which was really and is key in today's broadcast business.
I oversaw operations, and Chuck was a person that could really help break things down so you could really understand things better without feeling intimidated for asking the question.
So if you're sitting in front of a manager or other non-technical person and you're trying to explain why we need to do this or why we need to buy this or something, and you have this geek speak coming out of your mouth, it's just, you know, you're not getting anywhere with that. So early on in my career, I realized that if you want to get somewhere, you have to speak their language.
The engineering, the toys change practically monthly, and they're this big instead of room size. It just changes. Change is why you're here. When things change, then, in the engineering department, if they don't get the first call, it's a very soon call after that. And that is what the engineering departments do for this industry.
And I think that he really loves it, and he really embraces change.
He was so pivotal during the transition from analog to digital a few years ago.
When we went into the digital age, Chuck was right there on top of it with some of the best in the business across the country.
When you think about it, you need a new everything when you go from analog to digital. We needed everything basically from the cameras, through the control rooms, through the technical core and the program servers, all the way out to the transmitter, up the tower, the line, the antenna, everything.
It took a lot of patience, a lot of determination on his part to stay ahead of the curve, knowledge-wise.
Every single thing had to be changed out. It's a very huge, monstrous project. And we did most of it in-house. So we're pretty proud of that.
When emergencies take place, it is absolutely critical that we get the word out to Wisconsin citizens.
The emergency broadcast system has now been changed to the emergency alert system today. And with more, here's Leonard Charles, who's committee chairman of EAS for the Society of Broadcast Engineers.
The EBS, or the EAS that replaces the EBS, its primary function is as it was, and that is to allow the president to talk to every person in the country and its territories.
Chuck played a pretty major role in this because as it was adopted, there was a need in order to put a book out so that broadcast engineers and state organizations could figure out how to put this new technology to work. And Chuck took on the task of writing that book and taking care of the instructional role inside the Society of Broadcast Engineers.
When there are technical problems, technical issues throughout the state, throughout the country, oftentimes Chuck's the one everyone wants to talk to. Chuck was one of the founding members of Wisconsin's Amber Alert Committee. What's more important than bringing kids home safely?
Since the Amber Alert was born in Wisconsin, I think we've had some like 29 alerts, and we've recovered every child, so we're very, very proud of that.
There's a lot of professions in this world, and not very many of them can say that they've saved lives and property, and in Chuck's case, especially so. I believe that there are people alive today because of his efforts.
I started out in this business in 1974. 1974, that's what, 43 years? And I have been on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year since 1974. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do the first day I get retired? The very first day, I'm going to change all my phone numbers.
He's worked hard, diligently, well.
He's a quiet, respected hero.
An engineer's engineer, and he is a non-engineer's engineer.
Probably the best engineer I have ever met in my entire life, bar none.
He is the prime example of broadcast engineering and the management and leadership that it requires.
Every revolution is surpassed by another revolution, and the technology is moving so fast, it's really, really hard to keep up. So in 50 years, who knows? Who knows? It might be a chip in the side of your head, you know?
Late last year, we lost a shining star in Wisconsin's broadcast community. 2002 Hall of Fame inductee, Ed Hinshaw. Ed spent the majority of his broadcasting career in Milwaukee, which included 37 years at WTMJ-TV, serving many roles. But perhaps the one he will most be remembered for was as the white-haired statesman who delivered the station's editorials in the days when TV editorials were as common as weather forecasts. With a long list of awards and accolades to his credit, Ed's record of service to his industry and community is exemplary. Ed Hinshaw was truly a Wisconsin Hall of Fame broadcaster. He will be missed and remembered.
The governments of the Milwaukee area have been reckless and uncaring in their dealings with Major League sports franchises.
I started in 1954 when I was in the 8th grade. I was a sousaphone player because I was a large kid from my age, and I was in the 8th grade, and the lead trombone player, who was a junior in high school, stopped me and said, "Hey kid, you got a good voice. You ought to try to replace me in my part-time job at the radio station here, KXRA." And I said, "Well, okay." I said, "Well, how do I do?" He says, "Well, you go talk to the program director."
You get the weather, music, news, and sports the American way when you tune to 1490 KXRA.
I went in for the audition, and they gave me some things that were pretty standard to read, some newscasts, that kind of thing. And then they gave me a commercial to read without the chance to look it over. And the one thing I remember about it is it was a commercial dealing with a disease that chicken get called coccidiosis. And I hit that word and nailed it, got it done. And I looked up and smiled, and they hired me. And I got a part-time job at the KSTP station and was there for 5 years, and then thought, well, I better get a full-time job somewhere. And so I went to the Voice of America. One of the guys that I worked with had been an announcer at WTMJ years ago. And he said, well, you know, I'll call Jack Krieger, an old friend of mine, and we'll get you a job in the newsroom there, maybe. So he called Jack, and I sent my videotape and other stuff to Jack. And a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call. Jack had a very flat voice. And he said, well, we think we'd like to hire you. And I said, okay. And he said, how much do you need? And I thought, well, push it as hard as you can, you know, right now. So I said, $180 a week. Long pause. Jack said, I think we can handle that. And I thought, but I took the job and came here, was going to stay here a couple of years, and then go off and maybe be an NBC news correspondent or something. Well, we got to Milwaukee and fell in love with this place, and so I stayed.
I think what stands out for me about Ed is just his basic integrity, whether he was a reporter, an anchor, the editorial voice of the station, public affairs or human resources, or lobbying on behalf of and advocating for broadcasters. The one thing about Ed you always know is that you are getting his view authentically and with integrity.
The toughest time was in 1968 when the school desegregation order was issued here. What we agreed to do was a 3-hour prime-time documentary on desegregation. And we were credited with making Milwaukee the safest desegregation process in the country. And that was a phenomenally proud moment.
One of the more bizarre practices of the government of the city of Milwaukee is to pay parts of the salaries of officials of the labor unions which hold contracts with the city.
I think doing editorials, which I'm sorry is not done in broadcasting much anymore, was really the great challenge and the great achievement. We did editorials 6 days a week.
When he was doing editorials for the station, he was not afraid to take a stance that was sure to engender some controversy, and yet it was thoughtful, and it was done in a way that I think was never mean-spirited. Even at its most provocative, it was not mean-spirited.
When I was at ITI for years, Ed Hinshaw was the man, you know, the voice of reason over at TMJ and doing editorials And I was like, whoa, that guy's pretty good. And then when I went to TMJ in later years, I realized that Ed is not quite as serious as his editorials might lead you to believe. Ed Hinshaw liked to have fun.
Ed Hinshaw, big voice, lots of jokes. Funny guy. Seems so serious on the air, but away from the camera, very, very funny man.
Well, off the air, Ed Hinshaw is one of the best storytellers that you'll ever meet. But the only story I can remember that tells the Ed Hinshaw story I can't tell.
Some people tell me I'm a great storyteller, and you get to be a storyteller by telling stories. And I've always loved doing that.
The only thing about Ed that could be a little annoying is that when you were on deadline and he wasn't on deadline, it seemed like the perfect time for him to come up and tell you a story. So what are you working on, Tom? Oh, really? Henry Meyer. Well, let me tell you about Henry Meyer and the time. And we're saying, Ed, I'm on the air in 5 minutes. No, save the story.
I think Ed Hinshaw would want to be remembered as someone who was fortunate enough to be the voice and the face of this station and building's editorial policy with a mission of change and advocacy.
Ed belongs in the Hall of Fame because of the just basic core integrity. He is a broadcaster, a journalist with credibility. And when you can marry those three, that's a winning combination, and that's why people like Ed, we should be proud of people like Ed who've represented our industry and belong in the Hall of Fame.
Ed Hinshaw deserves to be in the Hall of Fame for the way that he conducted himself in a myriad of roles in the world of television and broadcasting. He was a consummate professional as a journalist. He was a powerful voice in the editorial community, arguing for a better Milwaukee and a better southeastern Wisconsin. And he was a good colleague and good friend to many of us for many years.
Bill Hurwitz, another Milwaukee broadcasting superstar and one of the latest Hall of Fame inductees. Over the course of his 44-year career in the Milwaukee market, Bill repeatedly raised the bar for radio advertising sales performance, and along the way, helped countless businesses to compete and thrive. Bill Hurwitz is a force. He's a broadcasting go-to guy, and he's a 2017 Wisconsin Broadcasting Hall of Famer.
People who have never met Bill Hurwitz will tell you that they feel like they've known him forever.
Bill Hurwitz is a first-class guy and a first-class broadcaster.
If you've ever played any kind of sport, he's the kind of person that you want on your team.
He makes people want to get into this business.
One of the biggest, I would say, banner carriers of the medium, of which is radio, that I've ever known.
He has this natural enthusiasm and energy, and so he quickly disarms people.
He's the great schmoozer.
Caring, competent, collegial, collaborative.
He just has that ability to relate well to people.
The power of his personality is so large that he creates his own weather.
Bill Hurwitz is the Wisconsin broadcaster.
I grew up in the world of advertising, and my grandfather owned a major ad agency in Milwaukee called Graben Shaw Advertising. It was a big advertising agency, and thanks to him, he introduced me to a lot of people after I graduated from college. And one guy liked me and hired me. And that was the beginning of a 44-year career.
Bill was a bushy-haired Milwaukee haberdasher that was coming in for his first job interview to get in the radio business.
I walked into 93 QFM. It was an FM radio station in 1975.
Didn't take long for us to realize that Bill was going to be an exceptional salesman. And Bill, as I recalled, was pretty much hired on the spot. He was really a radio superstar from the moment that he walked into QFM and accepted a job with Shamrock.
They gave me the yellow pages and said, why don't you go out and talk to some of these people about buying some advertising.
Bill was a real natural salesman. He was the kind of guy that you just want to sit and talk to, And thank God for us, a guy that people wanted to buy stuff off of.
Spent about a year and a half at QFM. Got a phone call from the big Mighty 92 WOKY at the time, the biggest radio station in southeastern Wisconsin. And I was with them for about six and a half years. After WOKY, I got a call from the Hearst Corporation and spent about 13, 14 years at WISN. And then Hearst was getting out of radio, and I met Willie Davis. Oh my goodness. Willie, I watched him play football. I mean, this Hall of Fame Green Bay Packer owning radio stations, all pro broadcasting. And we hit it off, and I started working for Willie as their national sales manager.
Well, I always relied on Bill to kind of take charge and to run things and to be the one that you would be able to depend on.
During those great years, I had the honor of being the vice president and general manager of our radio stations.
He took a group of radio stations that were not all that profitable when he took over the general manager position and made them very profitable. And he was a good friend to Willie Davis and still is.
Well, Bill has a wonderful relationship with Willie.
Bill does a great job. He's on top of everything, and I tell you, I don't know what we would have done without Bill.
Made me get up every morning and come to work and put a smile on my face because I knew the end of the day was going to be better than the beginning of the day when you work for Willie Davis. I love him.
I'm very grateful to Bill for the roles that he has played in my life, and I will always be grateful to Bill.
In 2004, the Linets, which was Shamrock Communications, and All Pro Broadcasting, Willie Davis's group, had to make a decision. You couldn't have standalone radio stations anymore. You needed to have a synergy of a bunch of radio stations together to enable to make the radio stations profitable to where they needed to be.
Our stations merged, became the Milwaukee Radio Alliance.
And I was the only one that knew Bill Linet, as a matter of fact, when the companies came together.
I already had known Bill at that point for 20 years, so that was a very happy coincidence, I think, for Willie and for me.
I had the pleasure of introducing Bill to Willie. It was a pretty special day.
The fact that Bill generated so much revenue on the national basis really allowed us to become a very profitable enterprise very quickly after getting together.
Neither company ever had a partner, and they worked together beautifully. It was a wonderful marriage made in heaven.
Bill realizes, and even today he realizes, business is people.
Bill loves being around people. He loves being around clients. He loves being around his staff. Bill was always the guy who built relationships.
I build a relationship with these people. I tell them I'm going to do something, and I do it.
One of his great skills, I think, was building an alliance and trust very quickly with people.
His relationships are legendary, and probably those strong bonds, his biggest contribution to our business.
We're in a fiercely competitive business, and I can tell you that Bill's competitors genuinely like and respect him.
Bill is the kind of competitor that will smile and ask you about your family because he really actually cares while he's trying to figure out how to win the game.
I love being competitive. I love that part of the game, if you will.
Losing is not a good thing for Bill. It's first place or no place.
Bill loves to win. Believe me, he loves to win.
And if he wins the game, he'll remind you that he did. And if he loses the game, he'll say, nice job, I'll get you next time.
Loves to win in ways that make you feel good if you're the person on the other side.
I love to give back. You need to give back.
I think his legacy in Wisconsin could be that he found a permanent home for the Wisconsin Broadcasters Hall of Fame at the Hilton Hotel in Milwaukee.
It's a great place. It's the appropriate place. And you know, Bill was able to go figure out how to align the planets, connect all those dots, and get that done on behalf of our industry.
It's probably one of the only hotels that still has a broadcast tower on top of it as a beacon to all of the past history of broadcasting in Milwaukee. Bill Hurwitz negotiated that permanent location.
And we have Bill to thank, I think, for that terrific Hall of Fame exhibit.
He believes in the product. He believed in it 40 years ago. He'll believe in it in another 40 years.
He's left a mark with generations of broadcasters who share the enthusiasm, the passion, and the commitment to not just be in broadcasting, but to do it really, really well.
He should be proud of all of his years in broadcasting.
To be able to spend 40 years in one market, you must have done something right. And he did.
I think his contributions to the state are not just what he did in his local market, but his leadership and service to the broader organization as well.
Bill Hurwitz has made a difference in Wisconsin broadcasting.
There is no one that's more deserving of being in the Hall of Fame.
It's been a great part of my broadcasting career to work with Bill.
I love Bill. He's a wonderful guy.
I love making a difference. I hope I did.
This program has recognized 3 extraordinary broadcasters whose career achievements have elevated the broadcast industry in Wisconsin and set new and higher standards for broadcasters as they serve the citizens of our great state. Wisconsin is an acknowledged leader in service-oriented broadcasting. Members of our Wisconsin Broadcasters Hall of Fame are the reason why. To see more of them and hear their stories, visit the Wisconsin Broadcasters Hall of Fame online at wisconsinbroadcastingmuseum.org. On behalf of all your dedicated Wisconsin broadcasters around the state, thanks for watching.